This is a catastrophe. My shaving pile is burning and my compost pile is starting to burn. Only you can prevent brush fires. You're watching Big Dave's Farm Life. For those of you new to the channel, welcome, and I'm so glad that you came along. On today's episode, it's all about the flame. I had a fire get out of control recently, and I suffered some losses from this fire that got out of control. So I'm gonna give y'all some tips about safely having a brush fire. This is not a comprehensive list. It's just a few tips. So there's my waiver. Let's get started. All right, let's go over the tips I have for you so that you can safely have your own fire. All right, guys, tip number one is you should have water nearby and readily accessible. Also, equipment should have fire extinguishers on them. And in some areas, it's actually a law that you have to have a fire extinguisher on equipment. If you look down here, I have a special adapter down here, and I got it from eBay. It probably wasn't but $12 or $15, and it allows you to use a water hose, a regular water hose with an IBC tote. It's very, very handy. These IBC totes in this size are the most common sizes are 270 or 330 gallons, but they are available in different sizes. Sometimes you can get these secondhand pretty cheap, and that's actually where I got this one. Also, sometimes I use this herbicide sprayer to spray down the area around the fire. And this one actually has a broadcast sprayer, so you can wet down a wide area around the pile. This one's a little bit small if you're going to have a big fire, but for small ones, but for small fires, it's a great size. Tip number two is to check on your equipment, on all their grease zerks and grease points, and check the bearings on your trailer and make sure they're not overheating. So there's a cap right here. You pull off the cap, and then you're able to pull the bearing out and to grease it, because if it runs out of grease and you run it for long, it can get hot and actually cause a fire. And we actually had a hay baler that caught on fire last year, and I will show you the area down there where that hay baler caught on fire. This is the area where the hay baler was pulled to so that it could continue burning. It had about a half a bale of hay inside it, and I don't know if you've ever seen a bale of hay burn, but once they catch on fire, there's no putting them out. And this area was much larger. It was about 15 or 20 feet by 15 or 20 feet, and it was all black, and it was a bunch of the synthetic stuff that was left over, the belts and the tires and stuff that burned and turned the ground black here. This is a year later. Tip number three, make sure check with your local fire department and make sure that you aren't that they don't have a burn ban out. And also in this tip, I'm gonna include making sure that it isn't windy and gusty. So if the wind is really strong, then it's not a good day to burn. And also if it's very gusty to where it changes directions a lot. The next tip I've already kind of mentioned, but just take a bunch of water or a water hose and dampen the ground around the burn pile. Next tip is to cut the grass really short around the burn pile and make sure that this is discharging the grass clippings all in one direction. So either push the clippings all away from the burn pile or all towards the burn pile. I always push them all away from the burn pile. All right, so if you look back there, you can see a barrel. So the next tip is that small fires can be burned in a barrel, which will make them much safer. You'll look over there, there's a barrel behind those tires. So my next tip is that small fires can be put inside a burn barrel, which will make them much safer. I don't use those because my piles are way too large. In fact, why don't I show y'all one of my brush piles that I'm going to be burning soon. All right, so here's one of my burn piles. If you can see, it's pretty big. I'm going to give you a tip with this one is make you look above where you're having the fire. Make sure there's not tree branches or power lines that are going to get burned. And if you'll notice, there's a problem with this one. I'm going to have to move this huge thing, and I really dread that. It's when I first got my tree and post puller, that's when I put the pile here. And, you know, you live and you learn. But I won't be making that mistake in the future. I'll get you a different angle from down there so you can see how deep this thing goes. Here it is from a different angle, and the ATV is in the same location. I've not moved it. So, pretty big, huh? Now we're gonna go over the post-mortem examination, and I'm gonna kind of just go over how I think the fire may have started and maybe what you could do to prevent that. All right, my last tip is before you leave the area, actually put your hand on the ground and make sure it is cool enough to the touch to where you can easily put your hand there. Be careful. I'm not saying to touch burning coals. It should be no longer smoking. There should be no smoke, no flame, and cool enough to touch. That's how you know that it is safe to leave the campsite or the brush fire in this case. All right, guys, that's my list of tips to help you stay safe while you're burning so you won't make the same mistake that I did. Thank you so much for coming. Please like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends. And remember, keep the dirt on your hands.